Let's talk about a definition of done. So what is a definition of done? Well, it's basically an agreed upon list of criteria that must be met before a piece of work, typically a user story, can be considered done. And here's an example of some things that might be on a definition of done. QA, unit tests, code reviews, documentation, sign-off. So how is a definition of done created? Well, it all starts with the development team, who will be owning and adhering to the definition of done. So we would want that team to gather, and then we would want that team to discuss, brainstorm, come up with some things they feel should be on a definition of done, and finally come up with a final list of things that will be in their definition of done. It's that simple. What is a definition of done actually used for? It's all about transparency. This quote is from the official Scrum Guide, and it talks about aspects of the process needing to be visible to everyone responsible for the outcome, and that's transparency. It requires aspects to be defined by a common standard so that observers share a common understanding of what is being seen. So here's an example where a definition of done could be useful. So we have two developers, cleverly named A and B. So we have A saying we're all done with this story. And we have B saying, no, we aren't. We don't have enough code reviews. Developer A says, well, Luke reviewed it. That should be enough. Developer B says, we need at least 2 more. A says, why? B says, because 1 isn't enough. And they just argue back and forth because it was never really decided, and it's one person's opinion versus another's. Now, what would have helped? A definition of done that explicitly states that in order for something to be complete, it must be code reviewed by at least 2 people. So in this scenario, the developers would refer to the definition of done, and it would be right there, visible, transparent, and the decision would be made and they'd move on. So what about other things that you might want to address in a definition of done? Probably that a story's acceptance criteria is met. Maybe that's fairly obvious, maybe not. We have things like unit testing. So how well covered should code be before we consider it done? Should it have 90% coverage, 75% coverage? What should be covered? Peer reviews, code reviews. Should we have a group code review in a room? Are we just going to use a tool and say that it's good if 2 people sign off on it, 3 people sign off on it? Just be explicit when you're calling this out. What environment should it be deployed to in order to be considered done? Are we going straight to production to be considered done, or are we going to a stable test environment to be considered done? And what about QA sign-off? Do we require a formal message or comment from a QA person saying, I've done this, these QA procedures, and I'm calling this done? Like, what do we require specifically? And do we require a product owner sign-off of some kind? Do we want to do a demo, a desk demo to them? And finally, we have kind of an overarching important statement, which is a definition of done should include anything necessary for the team to feel confident releasing their work to a production environment. This definition of done includes things that will ensure that what we release will not cause problems, that what we release will not come back to bite us, so the team needs to feel confident. And these are the things that will make the team feel confident. So to summarize, the definition of done is an agreed upon list of criteria that must be met before a piece of work is considered done. It is created and owned by the team that is doing the work. It's used to ensure that everyone has a common understanding of what it actually means to be done with something. And finally, it's a living document, meaning that it changes over time. and it should be inspected and adapted regularly. We can add things to it, remove things from it. We don't want it to become obsolete and static. And that is all we have to say about the definition of done. Thanks.